Welcome to the deep dive. You know that feeling. Modern life just feels relentless. The demands keep piling up. We're always connected, always on.
Constantly, yeah.
And for ages, the standard advice when you feel drained has been pretty simple. Just get enough sleep. We've all probably aimed for that golden 8 hours, right?
Definitely. The magic number.
It feels like the key for full recovery, but honestly, for so many of us, it's just, well, it's a source of stress when we can't consistently nail it.
Mm-hmm.
So what if that entire approach, this idea of a rigid 8-hour block, is completely out of step with the world we live in now?
That 8-hour target has definitely become this huge cultural benchmark. And yeah, missing it instantly makes you feel like you're starting the day already behind,
Yeah,
which just adds more pressure.
exactly. And that pressure, ironically, just makes it harder to actually relax and fall asleep in the first place.
Right. It's a vicious cycle.
So are we just doomed to be tired? Well, not according to the fascinating material we've been diving into for this session. We've been exploring excerpts from Nick Littlehale's book, Sleep.
Yes, Little Hales.
And he shares this completely different, incredibly practical approach. It's rooted in his work with some of the world's top athletes, people like the players at Manchester United and Real Madrid, the British cycling team, Team Sky.
Yeah, serious performers. He's sometimes called their sleep coach, but really his role goes far beyond just reminding them to go to bed.
Right. It's about fundamentally changing how they view and optimize their recovery.
Totally rethinking it.
And that's our mission today, to really unpack these sources, challenge that conventional wisdom around sleep, and pull out actionable insights you can put into practice right away.
Yeah, stuff you can actually use.
We're going to start seeing sleep not just as passive rest, but as a vital, active part of performance and recovery.
It's about smart recovery, not just staring at the clock on the wall.
Okay, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So right away, the material highlights how drastically our world has changed, especially in the last few decades. I mean, think about it. The internet, constant email notifications, those smartphones.
Those little pools of blue light, as he calls them.
Exactly. And this creeping 24/7 work culture, it's added layers and layers of stress and just completely disrupted old patterns.
You mean you're rarely ever truly off, or finished with work. Shops are open around the clock, travel is constant, shift work is so common now, our natural biological rhythms are just undersold.
Yeah. And this is where the idea of the myth of 8 hours really comes into focus. The book explains that aiming for one continuous 8-hour block is actually a pretty modern concept.
Right. Before the Industrial Revolution and artificial light, people often slept differently, maybe in shorter phases throughout the 24 hours.
So it wasn't this fixed universal requirement?
No, not at all. And even today, 8 hours is just an average across the population. Trying to apply an average as this rigid personal goal for everyone is incredibly counterproductive.
Yeah, you just feel bad if you don't hit it.
Exactly. It creates unnecessary anxiety. It can be quite damaging, really.
Okay, so instead of focusing on hours per night, the core concept introduced is thinking about sleep in 90-minute cycles.
Ah, the cycles, yes.
This is the fundamental building block of what Littlehales calls the R90 program, R for recovery, 90 for the cycle length.
This is absolutely key. It completely shifts the mindset. You move from just thinking about duration to understanding that recovery happens in these distinct, roughly 90-minute blocks.
Right.
And the sources make it very clear. Once a cycle is lost, in terms of its specific restorative purpose for that time, it's gone. You can't just catch up on lost cycles like, refilling a gas tank.
That's almost liberating, though, isn't it? You can stop beating yourself up about last night's missed hours.
Precisely. And the good news is that the body is incredibly robust. It's really good at adapting if you adjust your overall approach across the week.
Okay.
You focus on getting enough cycles in total over, say, 7 days. It takes the pressure off hitting a perfect number every single night.
So the goal becomes accumulating a sufficient number of these 90-minute cycles over a week, rather than obsessing over, did I get 8 hours last night? That feels much more flexible.
It is, and much more realistic for modern life. It empowers you to manage your recovery across the full 24/7 period, factoring in life's unpredictability instead of feeling like a failure if one night doesn't go perfectly to plan.
Shifting from hours to these 90-minute cycles yeah, it makes so much more sense in a world that doesn't operate on neat 8-hour blocks anymore. But what actually governs these cycles and rhythms within us? The book takes a deep dive into our natural body clocks.
Right, our circadian rhythms. This internal 24-hour body clock that's been, directing our biology since forever.
But like we said, modern life is pulling us away from it.
Totally. And the most powerful signal for setting this clock, It's light.
And getting enough daylight in the morning is absolutely essential for synchronizing that clock. Simple things like opening the curtains wide, having breakfast near a window, maybe a short walk outside.
Yeah, just signaling to your body, okay, the day has begun.
Right.
The source also addresses blue light. It gets such a bad rap because of screens. But blue light is actually good during the day. It helps set the body clock, suppresses melatonin, boosts alertness. The problem isn't blue light itself, it's blue light at the wrong time.
Late at night when you're trying to wind down?
Exactly. That's when it's badly timed, because it suppresses the melatonin you need for sleep.
So, while avoiding blue light before bed is important, actively seeking out daylight and even blue light during the day is just as crucial.
Absolutely. And simple evening adjustments, like dimming the lights, using warmer colored bulbs, red, yellow tones, even candles, can help your body transition naturally. It helps you avoid being at war with your own bodies, as the book puts it.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
And within this circadian framework, the book introduces chronotypes.
The larks and owls.
Exactly. Are you naturally an aimer or a lark, performing best in the morning? Or are you a PMer, an owl, peaking later in the day? Identifying yours, maybe using a questionnaire like the one suggested, is a really vital step in managing your energy.
And this isn't just some fun label, right? It profoundly impacts your daily energy levels, your performance windows.
Totally. For PMers, for instance, that morning daylight exposure is particularly critical. It helps pull their body clock forward a bit, reducing that natural lag compared to aimers.
Okay.
And for PMers, those tempting weekend lions, they can be especially disruptive.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Because they push the body clock back towards its natural later tendency. So Monday morning feels like significant social jet lag.
Ugh, yes, the Monday morning drag. I feel that. Understanding your chronotype can even influence how you structure your workday.
Yeah, scheduling your most demanding tasks during your natural peak time. The book suggests workplaces should think about this too. Maybe giving window seats to PMers or timing crucial meetings for when most people are likely to be alert.
That makes so much sense.
It's about optimizing work and life by working with your biology, not trying to force everyone into the same mold. Like the penalty taker example, thriving in the evening game.
Absolutely. Okay, so once you start understanding your natural rhythms and these 90-minute cycles, you can begin to strategically apply tools and techniques for better recovery throughout the entire 24 hours.
Right.
Let's tackle a big one that many of us rely on daily. Caffeine.
Yes. Caffeine.
Yeah.
Probably the most widely used legal performance enhancer out there.
For sure.
The sources highlight that in elite sport, it's used very strategically. We're talking measured doses at specific times for a targeted boost before training or a competition.
But in everyday life, it's often just habitual, right? Constant, without much thought.
Yeah. It becomes less about enhancing performance and more about simply propping yourself up to a baseline level, just getting through the day. And high, or crucially untimed use, can lead to negative consequences. Anxiety, jitteriness, building up tolerance, so you need more and more.
And messing with your sleep later on.
Of course, interfering with sleep. So the recommendation is pretty clear. Use caffeine strategically. Save that shot of espresso or strong coffee for when you genuinely need a sharp mental edge for a specific task, rather than just drinking it out of habit all day long.
Makes sense. Okay, so speaking of what happens when we are asleep, the book gives us a brief look at the different sleep stages.
Right. NREM, which includes light and deep sleep and REM sleep.
So deep sleep is mainly for physical restoration, muscle repair, growth hormone release.
Exactly. And it tends to be prioritized in your earlier 90-minute cycles. REM sleep is more about brain activity, memory consolidation, processing emotions. That becomes more prevalent in the later cycles.
And the body's pretty smart about this.
It's quite remarkable how adaptable it is. If you've missed sleep, especially REM, your brain will often prioritize getting more REM earlier in subsequent cycles. It tries to catch up on that vital processing.
That adaptability is really key. And it brings us to another powerful tool discussed: controlled recovery periods, or CRPs.
CRPs. This is Little Hale's term for what many of us might just call a nap.
And it's more structured, right? More intentional.
Yeah. The sources point to two natural dips in alertness during the day, one around midday and another one in the early evening. These are kind of prime windows for a CRP.
And the evidence for their effectiveness is pretty compelling. The book mentions studies like the NASA pilot study,
Oh yeah, the pilot study?
where a 26-minute nap significantly improved performance and alertness. I mean, CRPs, even short ones, seem to really aid memory consolidation and overall function.
And what's particularly interesting is you don't always need to actually fall asleep during a CRP for it to be beneficial.
Really?
Yeah, simply tuning out, properly resting, letting your mind wander, that helps in downloading the day. Processing experiences, clearing out mental clutter. Using a meditation app or just some quiet reflection can do the job too.
And this idea extends to taking short mind breaks, maybe every 90 minutes or so throughout your waking day.
Exactly. These brief pauses, even just for a few minutes, help reduce stress, maintain focus, and contribute to that continuous processing. You can even practice them with your eyes open, maybe just looking out a window during a meeting for a moment.
Ah, okay.
It's about giving your brain and body those little micro-recoveries. The book also directly challenges that cultural stigma around napping, the whole you snooze, you lose thing.
Yeah, that's still pretty prevalent.
It is. But the reality is, if you don't prioritize recovery, you will lose. Performance, health, well-being,
Yeah.
it all suffers in the long run. Workplace culture really needs to catch up to this.
Definitely. So beyond these daytime strategies, the sources place significant emphasis on structuring your time around sleep with pre- and post-sleep routines.
Yeah, these are crucial bookends to your recovery period. The pre-sleep routine is all about preparing your mind and body to switch off.
Technology down, right?
Critically.
Yeah.
Shutting down technology not just because of the blue light, but because devices keep your brain engaged and stress levels up. The book strongly recommends downloading your day before bed.
How do you do that?
Simple tasks, maybe journaling, meditation, anything to quiet the mental noise. It also mentions focusing on nasal breathing, perhaps using aids like nasal strips if needed, as mouth breathing is apparently less restorative.
Interesting. And the post-sleep routine, just as vital.
Just as vital for starting your day right. Resist that urge to immediately grab your phone.
Guilty.
We all are. Fuel your body, hydrate breakfast, help set your internal eating clock, get that crucial daylight exposure, especially important if you're a PMer whose body clock is naturally running a bit later.
Okay.
Gentle physical movement helps ease you into activity. Mental stimulation too, maybe listening to the radio or reading for a few minutes. The source stresses tailoring these routines to your chronotype.
So for PMers who aren't really morning people biologically.
Right. For them, a deliberate morning routine is even more critical to get going.
Yeah.
These routines are those marginal gains that add up. They help you avoid pushing yourself when you're not recovered, like that sprinter example in the book who kept getting injured.
Okay, so you're managing your cycles, understanding your rhythms, using strategic daytime recovery. Now, where exactly should all this crucial recovery happen? The book turns its focus to your physical environment.
Yes, urging you to think of your bedroom not just as where you sleep, but as a dedicated recovery room, like a sanctuary optimized purely for rest.
And a key piece of your sleep kit is your sleep surface, the mattress.
Mm-hmm.
And the source really challenges the common belief that the most expensive or the one labeled orthopedic is automatically the best.
Right. It needs to provide specific, individualized body profile support. That's going to vary wildly from person to person. He uses the great example of the different needs of athletes, like, say, LeBron James versus cyclist Laura Trott. Very different body types.
Yeah, completely.
And the story of Gary Pallister at Manchester United is quite powerful here. Simply changing his mattress made a huge difference in managing a chronic back issue that was really affecting his performance.
Wow.
It just emphasizes suitability and support tailored to you over fancy features or high price tags.
And there's a specific recommendation for your sleep position, the fetal position.
On your non-dominant side.
Right. So if you're right-handed, sleep on your left side. Why is that?
It's suggested for optimal airway alignment and also, interestingly, a kind of primal sense of security.
Okay. Now, when it comes to mattress size, the recommendation is quite direct, isn't it?
It is pretty blunt. A standard double bed really only provides enough space for one adult to sleep without being constantly disturbed.
Really? Just one?
According to this approach, yeah. For two adults sharing, a super king that's 6 feet wide, essentially two single beds pushed together, is presented as the minimum ideal size if you have the space.
Wow.
The suggestion is basically prioritize the mattress itself over an elaborate bed frame, even using the floor or simple pallets as a base if needed, just to accommodate the right size mattress.
That's certainly a practical, no-nonsense approach. The book also suggests that you don't necessarily need to splash out on a completely new, expensive mattress all at once.
No, exactly. An incremental approach. Using layers like a high-quality topper or comfortable duvets can significantly improve an existing mattress much more affordably.
Good tip.
Yes, and using washable layers for hygiene and comfort is key. And breathable hypoallergenic bedding, essential for temperature regulation and avoiding disturbances. Having options, maybe like 4 different duvet weights for different seasons, is better than a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay, so that's the bed itself. Moving on to creating the recovery room environment. The advice is to start with a blank canvas.
Either literally, by decluttering and maybe painting, or just mentally. White walls and minimal calming decor are suggested to reduce visual stimulation. Keep it simple.
And critically, you need to block out all light.
Every scrap of it. Blackout blinds or curtains that really seal the edges are ideal. The book shares examples of athletes using surprisingly simple, effective methods.
Like taping the edges.
Yeah, or even using black bin bags over windows like Team Sky apparently did.
Uh-huh.
Because eye masks. They're often unreliable and can be disruptive themselves.
Okay, and this is a huge one. Get technology and standby lights, OUT of the bedroom.
Absolutely non-negotiable, it seems.
Yeah.
Those tiny standby lights on chargers or TVs are described as being like lasers hitting your pineal gland, disrupting melatonin production.
Lasers. That's vivid.
Isn't it? Turn devices off completely. Don't just leave them on standby.
Yeah.
And smartphones are particularly problematic, whether you use them before bed, during the night, or first thing in the morning.
So the advice is?
Keep phones out of the recovery room entirely. Or at the very least, tucked away in a drawer, off.
Right. What about noise?
Noise control through soundproofing is important, obviously. But equally vital is creating a feeling of security in your recovery space.
Security. How so?
Locking the door, having personal comfort items, and yeah, the book mentions even an elite athlete might have a lucky object or teddy bear. It all helps the mind relax and switch off that hypervigilance.
That makes sense.
The examples of those dedicated recovery apartments at Real Madrid and Man City's training grounds, or the England football team bringing their own beds and taping up hotel windows. It just underscores how crucial this sense of a safe, familiar sanctuary is for high performers to truly switch off.
These examples really show the dedication to recovery at the top level. It's serious stuff. Of course, everyday life throws challenges our way, and the source tackles some common sleep problems.
Yeah, it does. One counterintuitive technique mentioned for those who struggle to fall or stay asleep is sleep restriction.
Sounds kind of harsh.
It does, but it's a structured method. Like the Rebecca example in the book, it's designed to make the time you are in bed much more efficient and consolidate your sleep. You gradually increase the time as sleep improves.
Okay.
It's definitely not about randomly cutting sleep back.
Okay. And a major topic the book addresses head-on is sleeping aids and pills.
Yeah. The stance is very strong against long-term use. It highlights the significant potential dangers. Addiction, often limited effectiveness beyond placebo for many people.
And serious health risks.
Yeah, potential links to increased mortality and even certain cancers highlighted in some studies mentioned. Doctors might prescribe them short-term for a crisis, but relying on them long-term is seen as really problematic.
And avoid the online stuff.
Definitely warns against self-medicating with unregulated online aids. The R90 approach is positioned as a much more sustainable, long-term solution.
So what do you do on those nights you just can't sleep?
Well, the advice, drawing on examples like the rower Steve Redgrave, is basically don't lie there stressing about it. Meditate, maybe visualize successful outcomes from your past, or just get up and do something quiet and productive until you feel tired again.
Okay. Modern life also presents specific disruptions like jet lag.
Jet lag. The general rule of thumb mentioned is about 1 day of recovery per hour of time difference, but it really varies individually. And while preparation steps can help, the author notes from experience, it's not always predictable or totally preventable.
Right, and shift work, that's a huge challenge for many.
Massive. It forces your body clock into direct conflict with your schedule. The book suggests tactics like strategic light exposure during your shift. Using daylight lamps or blue light is actually fine then. Scheduling CRPs during your natural, deep sleepiness window, which obviously shifts dramatically for a night worker compared to a day worker. And carefully timed caffeine use.
And then there's seasonal affective disorder, or the winter blues.
Yeah, the lack of natural daylight in winter months. It significantly impacts mood, motivation, energy levels. It affects neurotransmitters like serotonin and melatonin.
So what helps?
Making a conscious effort to get outside during the day, even when it's gray and miserable, and potentially using a SAKD lamp can help counteract this lack of light.
Okay. And finally, the sources touch on the immense physical and cognitive demands of high-impact sports, like NFL, rugby.
Yeah, including the really serious risk of head injuries and conditions like CPE, brought to public attention by cases like Mike Webster and the work of Dr. Bennett Omalu.
So for those athletes,
Well, while the nature of the sport itself is hard to change, maximizing recovery through these R90 principles becomes an absolutely crucial defense mechanism.
it's about aggregating those marginal gains in recovery.
Exactly. Through sleep and strategic rest, to help the body and mind repair and protect themselves as much as possible against the inherent risks and demanding schedules. It's about mitigating damage wherever you can, like the rugby players quoted in the book emphasize.
And that principle of using recovery as a defense, that applies to all of us, right? Navigating the stresses and demands of our own lives, not just elite athletes.
Absolutely. It's a universal principle.
Now let's bring this home a bit and talk about how optimizing recovery impacts our relationships and family life.
Yeah, a really important and often sensitive area. The book touches on that perennial question, sex before a big event.
The age-old debate.
Right. It concludes the evidence is pretty conflicting, and ultimately it comes down to individual impact. Good sex, the kind that's stress-relieving, relaxing, probably helpful. Bad sex, anxiety-inducing, creates tension, definitely not helpful.
George Best had a famous quote about that, didn't he?
He did. Famously irreverent quote about it not affecting his performance the night before. Memorable anyway.
But a much more common disruptor is simply sleeping with a partner.
Oh, huge. Snoring, different sleep schedules, duvet hogging. These are incredibly frequent causes of interrupted sleep for people.
So what's the R90 take on this?
Well, the sources present the idea, apparently adopted by some athletes, including Roger Federer, is mentioned of having intimacy and spending time together before bed, but then actually sleeping separately.
Really? Separate rooms?
Or at least separate beds in individual recovery spaces to get completely undisturbed, optimized rest.
Wow. And the book reinforces that the recommended ideal sleep position, fetal, non-dominant side, that can be tricky when sharing.
Yeah, it can be challenging, especially if you end up on your wrong side or you're constantly adjusting to avoid bumping into your partner.
Which links directly back to bed size.
Exactly. The argument is reiterated strongly. For two adults sharing, that Super King, the 6-foot wide one, is the minimum needed to significantly reduce mutual disturbance.
Minimum,
yeah. The book even suggests prioritizing bedroom size when you're house hunting, specifically for this reason, to fit the biggest possible bed.
That's dedication. Temporary separate sleeping arrangements are also presented as a valid option sometimes.
Yeah, during times of high stress or disruption, like maybe during pregnancy or before really important personal events, it's framed as being for mutual benefit. The book encourages not judging couples who choose to sleep separately. They might just be making a smart recovery choice for their situation.
Okay, moving on to raising children, especially newborns. That naturally involves significant sleep disruption.
Oh, massively. The sources emphasize the partner's crucial role in sharing this burden, acknowledging that mothers are often biologically predisposed to wake more easily.
So how can R90 help parent?
Well, the framework, particularly trying to maintain a constant wake time where possible and scheduling in those CRPs whenever you can grab them, it can provide some structure for parents to manage their own recovery amidst the chaos. Even if getting perfect cycles every night is just impossible.
Yeah, you have to be realistic.
Totally. And there's a reassuring perspective here, too, reminding us of the remarkable robustness of the human body to periods of sleep deprivation. Cites examples like round-the-world sailors, extreme polyphasic sleepers.
So the message is,
don't be too hard on yourselves during those demanding newborn or young child phases. Your body can cope better than you think. Focus on grabbing recovery when you can.
Right. Finally, the book delves into teenagers.
Teenagers and sleep. A classic combination.
It clearly explains that significant biological shift in their circadian rhythms during puberty, right? Causing them to naturally want to stay up later and wake up later.
Absolutely. Which is often in direct conflict with traditional school start times, leading to chronic sleep debt for so many teens.
And you add in the complicating factors, social lives, constant exposure to technology.
The blue light, the addictive nature of games and social media. It's a recipe for widespread adolescent sleep deprivation.
So the book makes a case for?
A compelling case for later school start times, perhaps even 10 a.m., to better align with teenage biology. It argues this could dramatically improve their mood, their learning, their overall well-being.
Makes sense biologically.
And there's a strong emphasis on the importance of educating young people, especially aspiring athletes, about the fundamentals of recovery and discipline. The example of the Southampton Football Academy is used.
What did they do?
They really focused on teaching the young players about R90 principles. The point being that investing in young athletes' rest is investing directly in their future performance and their ability to handle pressure, avoid burnout. It's about setting them up for long-term success.
This deep dive has completely reframed my understanding of recovery. It's so much more nuanced than just trying to hit that magic number of hours every night.
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond that rigid, often anxiety-inducing idea and embracing a much more flexible, practical, and evidence-based approach centered around those 90-minute cycles and strategically building recovery opportunities throughout your entire 24-hour day.
And crucially, seeing sleep not just as passive downtime, but as this powerful, active tool for performance enhancement.
Exactly.
By making informed adjustments based on your own natural rhythms, understanding your chronotype, optimizing your physical environment, using tools like CRPs, you really can significantly boost your recovery and just feel better, perform better.
In the R90 program, it's empirically tested, right? Used at the highest level by world-class athletes. But what's great is that the principles are incredibly adaptable to everyday life, whether you're navigating shift work, raising a family, or just dealing with the normal pressures of modern living.
So here's maybe a thought to consider as we wrap up. If aggregating these, marginal gains in recovery can make a real difference for world champions striving for their personal best, what could optimizing your recovery mean for your personal best in your own life, whatever that looks like?
Yeah, that's the key question. Think about just one small change you could maybe make today or this week based on what we've explored.
Just one thing.
Maybe it's setting a consistent wake time, even on weekends, or scheduling one short CRP in the afternoon, making a real effort to get that daylight exposure first thing in the morning. Or maybe simply removing one piece of tech from your recovery room tonight.
Take just one step towards treating your recovery with the importance it genuinely deserves. It really could make all the difference.